Hi, earlier today I posted a news roundup for the Armadaverse, and in that video I promised some new content for this channel, and here it is. This is going to be an explainer video, and today's subject is ship ages for the Imperial Combine Navy. One of the reasons I've chosen this subject is because most of the material that is going to be involved in this explainer comes from Steel from the Devil, which is the first book in the Armadaverse, so there aren't going to be that many spoilers. I am going to refer to events and ships in later books, but not in a way that would actually spoil anything. So one of the questions I've been asked before about ships and technology in Steel from the Devil is, why is it only the ICS Hammer that experiences this problem of pieces of the ship basically falling off when it emerges from a wormhole, and why do they have to shut down key systems and restart them once they exit a wormhole? Because, this is something that's a serious limitation. It affects their sensor capability, which obviously has a strategic knock-on effect because they can't get a tactical picture of a situation as soon as they emerge from a wormhole. In fact, that's part of the plot. The answer to that is basically that Hammer is old. She is an old ship. She's the previous generation of heavy battleship. The original ICS Hammer, the one we see right at the start of Steel from the Devil, is a Commodore class heavy battleship. She's been in service for a long time, and it's actually in the book, and I think it also bleeds over into the next book, List of the Dead. Captain Santani has quite strongly resisted moving to a new command and forgetting all about her ship. She's also rejected upgrades and retrofits that would have greatly improved the technology available to her aboard the Hammer. Now, she's certainly not alone in the Imperial Navy in keeping her ship frame, despite the fact that it's somewhat outdated and has been replaced by a new generation of ship. For example, Captain Ori Hakiki's ship, the Ninth Shadow, which we see in the Ravening Deep from Shattered Stars and will also be appearing in Whom God Shall Fear. That ship is a Regent-class heavy carrier. That's also the previous generation and has been replaced by the Glory class. What we see of Captain Hikikia throughout, mostly from Shattered Stars, I would say, is that he's a very pragmatic commander. And whatever reason Santani has for wanting to keep her old ship the way it is, Hakikia certainly doesn't share that sort of viewpoint. There is another factor with Captain Hakiki's ship, the Night Shadow, and that is that it's frequently used by tanker regiment. In fact, it's pretty much dedicated to the use of tanker regiment. And because tanker regiment are such an important asset on battlefields, we can probably infer from that Captain Hikikia will have quite a large incentive to keep the systems up to date, so he will no doubt welcome retrofits and upgrades. Most of the ship's technology, such as the CMAD's defensive turrets and the sensor pallets, are all modular designs that are intended to be swapped out when something better is available. And Hikikia strikes me as the sort of person who would take advantage of that. Most of the other ships that we spend any significant amount of time with are the current class. For example, the ICS Disputer, Heliothan's ship, is a Glory class heavy carrier, which is current. The Love Tap, which is the flagship of Admiral Batombe's fleet, is a Thunder class heavy dreadnought. Going back to Captain Aika Santani and her insistence on keeping her ship, the ICS Hammer, the way it is and not moving to a more recent model of ship, she's not even allowing herself to be influenced by the choices of her commanding officer, which of course is Admiral Pench, whom we also meet in Steel from the Devil. Now, Pench and Santani have been working together, or rather he's been her commander for many, many years, going pretty much all the way back to the Perseus conflict. His ship, the ICS Stiletto, is the flagship of the Second Fleet, which he commands, and it's a Raptor-class carrier. That's a standard carrier hull, it's not the heavy version of the hull. and that too is the current model for that ship type. Admiral Pench has no need to upgrade or retrofit that at the current time, but he too is seen to be happy to modify his ship because he's had his Raptor class carrier re-engineered somewhat. It's had significant changes to the power distribution systems to allow engineers to fit capacitors that would usually be found on a dreadnought, and the sole reason he did that was so that he could add a cutting beam, a main beam weapon, to the ship. Weapons of that type are something of a rarity in the Imperial Combine Navy, and it's the only time in this current story where we see one that isn't attached to a dreadnought. It's also one of the very few examples, in fact I think at this point the only example, of a directed energy weapon being used by the Imperial Combine that isn't Rift. I feel like I've gone off on a tangent now talking about other ships and other captains, but I suppose it's relevant because the question originally was, why is the technology on the Hammer so poor? Why do we see things falling off and sensors not working on emergence from a wormhole? And we never see that again anywhere else in the story. So that is the answer. Other commanders in the Imperial Armada are much more enthusiastic when their ships get old about accepting transfer of command to a newer version of the ship. They're also more open-minded about adding to, improving or upgrading or modifying the technology of those ships, and don't see them in the way Santoni does as being a sort of a single indivisible unit that she wants to keep as it is. As far as the ICS Hammer goes, the problem, if you want to call it a problem, is of course self-solving because of events towards the end of the book. I won't spoil that for people who haven't read the book yet, but let's just say that quite a few more bits fall off the ICS Hammer